Hi, my name is Jeff H. Sipe of PracticeInterviews.com, where we offer a variety of services, including practice interviews, negotiation strategy, and we have a course coming out really soon. So, how I got hired at Google. Never really intended on telling this story, but a YouTube comment came in late last year, and I thought, well, maybe this is an additive video. Maybe it's a video where I just throw it in during the week because I kind of just tell my story. And then I thought, wait a second. There's a huge way for me to deliver value to the community, to highlight a few of the items that went well for me, intentional and some unintentional, throughout this process, and talk about how I got hired and maybe how you could follow a few of those tips and tricks to also get hired at Google. If you like my content, please like. If you have any comments, please comment below. And if you like my overall content, please subscribe. Okay, item 1, LinkedIn. Many YouTube creators like myself put and build and post videos on LinkedIn. People don't watch them. And I, to this day, cannot figure out why. LinkedIn is an incredibly powerful tool, and honestly, without it, no way I get the job at Google. So here's the background. I was working at a medical device company called Volcano, and I was hired at Volcano to hire sales reps. So these sales reps would go in, chat with the doctors, etc. And the goal was actually to learn about their positions, recruit them, and then maybe transition, maybe switch, maybe work on these roles. But pretty early on, they said, hey, Jeff, you're also going to work on finance and accounting roles and quality engineering roles. And then about 3 to 6 months in, they said, we're also going to have you work on software engineer roles. Every time a new role came up, I would add it to my LinkedIn profile. And so after about a year at Volcano, I got contacted by a third-party recruiter, and they said, hey, we like your background. We had a brief chat, and the interviews were set up at Google. And the reason why I bring all this up is that if I didn't add the software engineering piece to my profile on LinkedIn, I probably wouldn't have gotten contacted. They really liked that background in technology. And so just doing that one update was critical. And I want you to watch videos on LinkedIn. LinkedIn is a great way to open doors at companies. Item 2, prep. So I'd always practiced and prepared for interviews. Just as a recruiter, it's something that you kind of know, and you're in the industry, so it's something that you do. But I gave myself the same advice that I give a lot of my clients, which is have a crappy weekend. And I really did have a crappy weekend. I spent all weekend focused on writing down my behavioral answers, thinking about themes, thinking about some clarifying questions. What were these high-level frameworks that I might introduce? And then, of course, practicing questions, practicing them out loud. At the time, I actually wasn't practicing with another person, which is something I'd strongly recommend. But I worked incredibly hard to make sure I was prepared. Item 3, self-belief. Please don't stop the video here. I know some people might start to bow out at this point, but the reality is that you have to believe you're going to get the job. And it's not overconfidence. I believed I would get the job for a couple of reasons. I knew I was going to prepare and practice and put more time and effort and energy into that prep stage, and I had a good background. I had about 5 years of recruiting experience, so I knew I had a solid foundation and I had worked in a lot of different environments. But I truly did believe I was going to get the job, and believing that really helped translate into success during the interview day. So, item 4, adaptability. So Monday arrives, I'm so psyched, I absolutely have a ton of nerves going on too. I believed in myself, but you should still have nerves, that's good, that's healthy. And the day fell apart. All the times got changed, the interviewers got changed, everything just was a mess. And I just didn't let it bother me. Actually, I did quite the opposite. What I did was I really focused on, hey, this is a positive. And making sure and understanding that things can change, it's a really, really good thing because it was meant to be. If these interviewers were getting pulled in other directions, I didn't actually want them interviewing me because maybe they'd be stressed out, maybe they'd be distracted. So I knew if it was getting changed up, hopefully I was getting people who could take the time and who wanted to take the time. Item 5, moving forward. Great learning lesson here. I absolutely bombed the first interview. Bombed. No connectivity. My answers fell flat. Tons of confusion from my interviewer. We did not connect. And the way the day was set up is the first interview was for a sourcer role. I wasn't really interested in a sourcer role, but it was thrown in there, and I definitely did not want to bomb the interview. And then I had 3 interviews for a recruiter role. Now, all this was done via video because I was a contractor I was living in San Diego, and the job was in Mountain View. But the first one did not go well. And instead of focusing in on the negative, I actually flipped it and I took it as a positive to say, okay, we got that bad one out of the way. Now we can move forward. I want you to take the same mentality, and it doesn't even have to be different interviews. It could be within the same interview. Not every question is going to go perfect, so our ability to have a short memory and move forward very quickly and be in the present is going to be critical. Item 6, be fun. Have fun. So, classic video interviews, business on top, casual on the bottom. I have my shirt, my tie, and I'm wearing shorts and taking these video interviews. And one of my interviewers was my boss. And I didn't know it at the time, of course, but he was going to be my boss, and he made fun of me for wearing a tie. And it's a great pause moment. Of course, we always want to check in with our recruiter or HR professional to see what we should be wearing. I knew Google was casual, but I thought I'd step it up a little bit. And he made fun of me, and I made fun of myself, and it was a good joke and a really casual moment, and I was fun with it. I didn't take myself so seriously, and this is really important because people are going to hire you because they want to work with you. So just have a little bit of fun with it. We put so much stress and anxiety in these interviews, but when people show their personality, show your personality. It's okay to have a little bit of fun. Item 7, negotiation. I just want to sneak this one in because it was Monday that these interviews happened, and the same day at about 9 p.m., the agency calls me. They said, hey, we'd like to offer you the job at this rate, and you need to start in 2 weeks, and we can get you the paperwork tomorrow if you're ready to sign. And I just jumped to it. I said, yes, I'll take it. And of course, it was a huge pay bump for me, pretty typical for a lot of people stepping into Google. So I was really excited, but it's just a good reminder when you're getting hired at these companies to step back and always have a negotiation plan, because clearly I didn't have one. I was just so excited that I kind of lost myself in the moment. Item 8, flexibility. So let's go back to that phone call. I'm taking this phone call, and at the time, my girlfriend, now wife, Jenny, is looking at me, and I hang up and I said, look, we're gonna make it work. And I had to move from San Diego up to the Bay. We had a place. It just wasn't gonna be that we were gonna drop everything and just move up there. That wasn't the reality. And so, especially with COVID and just the new job landscape that we have, I would say just be really flexible. If a job opportunity comes your way, explore it. It might say San Francisco or Seattle or New York or London, but there might be flexibility to get more remote time. You might just have to go and take that leap, knowing that there might be some temporary pain for a long-term, really good benefit. So I would say just don't be too rigid. Be really flexible when it comes to your job search, because you just never know where it's going to lead. Item 9, brand. So I want to spend a little bit more time this year flexing and talking a little bit more about brand. And it's a little off topic for how I got hired at Google, but not really. I wasn't really hired. I was hired as a contractor. I was not a full-time employee. It was a temporary 1-year gig. And so when I went in, and this is what I would encourage to anybody, build that really strong brand from day one. So I worked harder than I had ever worked. I showed a willingness to take on anything and everything, ask great questions, show tremendous positivity throughout. And because I built that really strong brand and obviously performed really well, only 4 months in, I was asked for my resume and to really go through the process. And I wouldn't have gotten there if I hadn't have built that strong brand. Now, here's really what happened. I was told that my accomplishments would be given to hiring committee if I could pass 2 interviews. So of course, one was the dreaded GCA interview, and then secondarily, it was a Googliness interview. And these were the 2 interviews that I would have to pass, along with building that good brand and obviously having those great accomplishments if the interview scores were really high. So item 10, connectivity. And this is where I think I really had some good success in these conversion interviews. And so there's lots to cover in this area. So let's talk about the GCA interview first. Now, internally, a lot of recruiters in my same position performed well, had not done well in this interview. So I knew that. So it did add a little bit of stress and anxiety going in, but a few items that I feel like I did really well. One, checking in. So in any of these open-ended interviews, open-ended questions, we really want to build that back and forth and make it conversational. And I didn't really understand the power and importance of that. But my first answer was really, really long, and there was lots of back and forth, lots of checking in, and my interviewer gave me nothing. He literally said nothing. But I always made sure that the path I was taking and my approach was clear, and I stopped to check in and really get direction from him and take control and push the direction as well. Secondly, risk. When we get these open-ended questions, we got to take a little bit of risk because a lot of times we're working with very limited data. So in the first question, I actually chose to not answer the question. I said, I don't like the path, and here's why. And here's a few other approaches we could take and why those approaches might be successful. Now, ultimately, I did end up answering the question, but I just showed that I was willing to problem solve in a different way, and I think that had really good power and impact. And then lastly, questions. We always have to ask questions, and I forced our interview to go way over time by asking questions after question after question. You'll never run out. You'll still want to check in and say, I love questions. I have a ton. I just want to make sure we're okay on timing, and we actually did end up getting kicked out of that room, but that was good. I really pushed the envelope there. So my second interview was the Googliness interview. And the first question alluded to, what is your favorite thing about Google? And I started to talk about the people, the environment, the relationships. And the risk I took here, my interviewer was very, very casual and laid back. I said, I'd love to spend more time diving in and talking about these subjects. I think we could really focus on these items during our conversation. And she agreed. So I really led and guided the conversation to say, here's what we should talk about, and here's why, and it's super interesting. And yeah, it was risky, but if she had said no, it wasn't a huge risk, because I would have said, okay, yeah, I just get super excited about that topic, and we could have moved on. But it did work because I was willing to say, like, hey, this is somebody who's pretty chill, like, let me have that conversation. Item 11, the last one, just patience. Patience in the process, and patience will be just kind of understanding and knowing that the process at these big tech companies can take a lot of time, especially out of Google. Just make sure you're doing a lot of check-ins, having those really good dialogues, you're being gracious and kind, and then when you get to the end, going back to that earlier item, I do want you to negotiate and have a negotiation plan. I don't know if this is the perfect path to tell you about my experience, but I thought if I highlighted a few items that I did well throughout, it might help you and give you some items to think about as you go through the process, whether it's Google or any other company. So that's how I got hired. I really hope it helps, and I hope you enjoyed this video. Thanks so much.